Hello, everyone, again to the webinar about scaling teams, scaling product development, and scaling release process. This is a next webinar from Callstack. And like I said in the chit chat section, this is more business use case oriented series from Callstack. And our agenda for today, we're going to talk about two distinct subjects. One section is about scaling complex React Native applications, which has its organizational challenges and it has its super app side of things. And then Chris Pavlak will take us through two real life use cases of Re.Pack and of super apps, which is MoMo and leading automotive company. And as always in our webinars, we will have a Q&A section. To get to the Q&A section, we will need some questions from you that we can answer. So if you go to slido.com and enter this number or simply go through the QR code, you will get here. This is a Slido Q&A panel where you can type your question. And I'm going to just say test. And you can also sign your question with your name and you can send the question. And then we have our producers on the call to review the question. And if the question gets reviewed, you can vote on each other questions or on your own questions as well. That way we know which questions are most important for you, and we will answer, we'll be answering the questions from the top to the bottom, sorted by upvotes, so that if you really care about something, please write it down, please vote on it, and we will get to that question. And you can also withdraw. Okay, going back to webinar. And this is also a summary from what we already discussed. I'm Łukasz Chrudziński. I'm React Native expert at Callstack. I'm also a host of the React Native Show podcast. With me is Chris Pavlak, our head of business development. Hello, Chris. How are you?
Hello. Very good. Welcome, everyone.
And also on the call with us is Mike Pierzchała, our head of technology, who is actually going to get us started. So, Mike, up for you.
Hello, hello. Pleased to see you all here, and thank you, Łukasz. So, yeah, let's get this started. And I'll start with one of my favorite things about React Native, which is this framework allows us to ship really fast for all the platforms out there at the same time. And as we add new features, things start to take more time. There's more planning, coding, testing, maintenance, and naturally we start to ship a little bit slower. The product hires more developers to get more stuff done. New teams are formed around new features, and so you can keep on shipping, and your company decides to grow to new markets to serve more users and serve them experiences tailored to their regions and interests. And even more teams are formed. And now you find yourself as one of 30 front-end engineers, and the same teams that allowed for more feature delivery are frequently blocked by each other because you work on the same product, and it's increasingly harder to ship fast. So you release slower and slower. And does it sound familiar to you? If it does, you probably are a super app. But what exactly is a super app? In typical terms, super apps are multi-purpose platforms that integrate a wide range of services and features to fulfill various user needs, all within a single interface. Or in other words, it's basically any big app with lots of functionality. This concept is very popular in Asia. For example, WeChat from China, being a chat social network, payment provider, and it can even handle insurance for you. Alipay, also from China. It's a payment app that evolved into an everything app, allowing you to handle travel, shipping, but even integrates with third-party apps like Uber. There was also Grab from Southern Asia. It handles transportation, food delivery, and digital payment services. These apps are often described as everyday app for everything. Look at WeChat alone. Its feature offer is massive. So it is its app size of 600 megabytes on iOS. And a super lot of people already use super apps. Apparently, this is what people want in the East, right? But guess what? It's not only Asia. So on the West, we have Uber, which is a ride-hailing, scooters, food delivery, and everything but around delivery in one app. There is Revolut, which is everything around finance. There is a Polish app, e-commerce app Allegro, which is everything about buying things locally or from the entire country. And there's also Facebook, offering everything around social networking with marketplace and dating. And these apps also serve billions of users. It's just that in the West, we apparently like lots of services scoped around a rather single theme. Okay, so now that we know our app is super slow with super problems, and it's a super app, what we can do about it and what I can do about my time to ship. And before jumping into conclusions and some solutions, it's worth to realize that in fact we're dealing with organizational issues, excessive communication, sharing resources, onboarding, conflicts, and who owns what.
So apart from Slido, we have also some service prepared for you. So if you are at this webinar, you're probably dealing with some of the issues that Mike already discussed. So if you could please let us know with this poll, with the survey, which one of them are most problematic for you, we can deliver better content to you and make our offering more relevant. So please take a few seconds to vote. I'm gonna end this poll quite fast to get to the more content from Mike and Chris. I can still see some people voting, so I'm not going to stop yet. If you don't see your preferred answer here, you can also write it down as a question in Slido or as a comment in Slido, and we will also get a note of that. Okay, Mike, I'm gonna end this poll while you are delivering the next slide. What do you think?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I'm gonna leave the poll open for 30 seconds more, and Mike, it's your stage.
Okay, so let's get to some possible solutions. And the solution to many organizational issues is better organization through thought out infrastructure and decentralization of ownership and deployments and more, which is made possible by that infrastructure. So for example, Server solved these with microservices, and on the web, developers solved it with micro frontends. Since with React Native, we bring so much of our ideas from the web to mobile development, maybe we could leverage micro frontends there as well. Let's think about it. To bring true micro frontends to the mobile, we need dynamic code delivery because we don't want to ship users unnecessary code. And Android supports this in the form of feature delivery, which is quite limited and not generally encouraged by the platform itself. And both platforms, however, support WebView, to load web content dynamically. And this is what Uber and Alipay are doing, for example. It has its benefits, but we lose the native feel of the platform. And finally, we can leverage hybrid JavaScript frameworks like React Native that happen to run a dynamic language, which we can load over the air and update during runtime. Thank you, JavaScript. And to handle the dynamic loading, we need a bundler that supports it. With React Native, we typically use Metro, which is great and optimized for the framework. However, it doesn't yet support dynamic code loading, at least not officially. However, there is a bundler that supports this use case very well, and it's also very well known on the web. And it's Webpack, with first-class support for remote code loading. And specifically related to micro frontends, it supports a really, really nice feature, which is module federation. I told you that web solve micro frontends, but what I didn't tell you is the obvious thing. There is no single solution, and they all have trade-offs. The one that we found has the best overall developer experience is module federation. It introduces separate builds for the same app, allowing for more independent teams and deployment, and sharing code between the apps without ever touching NPM to do so.
Actually, on our podcast, the React Native Show podcast, which I'm a host of, I had a pleasure to host Zach Jackson, who is maintainer of Webpack and actually an author of Module Federation in Webpack. So in this episode, we were discussing Module Federation and Webpack specifically. So if you want to know more, I would ask Marta to link this show in the chat and in the email after this webinar. Also on this podcast episode, we had a guest, Paweł Trysła, who is an author of
Re.Pack, which is our next generation attempt to bring Webpack to React Native. To implement module federation in React Native, we needed to rewrite its predecessor Hull from scratch by shifting more responsibility to the users and leveraging the plugin system of the React Native CLI that our team just rebuilt at that time. We could focus on bringing necessary web-compatible Webpack plugins to React Native, while improving compatibility with the React Native framework itself.
So I have the next survey for you. This one is really short. And so we've been working on Re.Pack for, you can say, years now. And we've been promoting Re.Pack specifically on our podcast and through some conference talks also for several months. So I'm wondering if you are familiar with it. So please let us know, and I will allow Mike to move on with the presentation, and you can still vote in this survey.
And why we're talking about Re.Pack is because with this tool, we can build something more specific than a typical super app. We can build federated super apps, optimized for dynamic feature delivery and shipping fast. So thanks to Re.Pack, our app can still grow in functionality that's relevant only to particular users without having all users to pay the cost of app size. And at the same time, it allows for small lean teams like the green and red here that can work in isolation on their features or so-called mini apps, even in separate repositories. The teams can choose whether to run the full app or just work in scope environment of their own mini applications. We found most developers prefer isolation, which allows for faster feedback loop, onboarding, and less distraction. However, it's not required to use separate repositories. There are themes that thrive in monorepos and can help handle its apps and the complexities. There's quite an even split in the proponents of monorepos and polyrepos, also at Callstack, and Module Federation supports both at the same time. What's important here is for the teams to be able to deploy their code at their own pace without being blocked by others. And for the host app to be able to pick the versions it wants to load over the air. To ensure the host app loads your code, not tampered by bad actors, Re.Pack signs all the remote JavaScript bundles, similar to code push. It's automated and you're the one in control. It's almost like we develop for the web browser. Think about it. Your users can get the latest bug fixes and features without doing anything. And without re-downloading the whole bundle that can easily get up to 40 megabytes for apps like Discord. And this is what would happen with tools like Code Push. And picking the correct version or a feature requires coordination with a server that serves the bundles. We also need some kind of automation for the deployment, and Module Federation in React Native requires some runtime setup as well. And since Re.Pack is bare bones toolkit for Webpack plugins and loaders, which gives you lots of freedom, we recently open sourced a showcase for you to try, providing all the necessary wiring for a federated super app. Check the experience, run it locally, read the code, and file some issues if you see something off. Your product shouldn't ship slower just because it's big. Re.Pack and Module Federation can rewire your teams and change the way they work for better. And what's most important, ship fast again. Of course, there are some gotchas. So, for example, this solution is for big teams only. We rarely see teams smaller than 30 front-end engineers working on the same app that would need this kind of architecture. You will need an infra team that will handle deployments, dependencies, upgrades, and all of that. Although you probably have this team if your app is that big already. There is also no lazy loading for native code. We only load the JavaScript bundles. So all the native modules that your mini apps are using need to be bundled with your host application. And Apple won't like the fact that you're shipping new features without them knowing in a regular release process. So you may be cautious around that. And to recap, super apps are just big apps shipping loads of features for everyone, usually statically or with web views. Federated super apps are optimized for dynamic feature delivery and shipping only necessary code to the users, code that renders fully native experiences thanks to React Native. They use Re.Pack and Module Federation to orchestrate building and releasing modules independently. All this dynamic code is code-signed, both monorepos and polyrepos are supported, and we have a reference showcase repo for you to try. Now, let's move to Chris Pavlak, who will shed some light on some real-world use cases we help building at Callstack.
Thank you, Mike, and hello, everyone, once again. So definitely Re.Pack wasn't developed for no reason. It was developed based on our experience with our projects and for handling real life use cases. And there are like two main ways and two main cases when you might want to use Re.Pack. Is one of these being when you already have a super app and you want to optimize it, and you want to build a super app and you want to build on a proper architecture from the very first day. So today I will bring up two examples for those two cases exactly. And I'll start with MoMo. MoMo is the #1 Vietnamese e-wallet built with React Native with millions of users. So why? And this case actually is about having a super app first and then upgrading to Re.Pack. So why they even went for Re.Pack in the first place? So first of all, they, as Mike mentioned, usually if you have a super app, you already have some custom JavaScript setup, if it's in React Native, to maintain it. So they wanted to just open source that to Re.Pack, to the community, to us at Callstack, and benefit from this being maintained externally and being upgraded, being provided with new features and support. So that's the first thing. The other thing was in the level of independence in the day-to-day work across the teams. So many conflicts, communication, how to handle multiple features at once. Because as you see on the screen, there are quite many. That was their problem. So federated, so like splitting this and allowing teams to work in an independent way was an answer to that. And they even took it one step further to the extent of allowing third parties to develop features for their app. And that's amazing, especially from a business development standpoint, because it's like synergy. They benefited from having more partners and users of their partners, but also their partners were allowed to have their mini apps within their super app embedded right into that, and being able for MoMo users to use that. So imagine you're an insurance company that would like to have their offering directly into e-wallet. So you can do that, developing a mini app for MoMo. So, and on top of that, also we have one last thing, more to the performance of this app and to the app size. So having multiple bundles splitted and delivered dynamically to the users as they needed, they were able to went well below market average upsize for that featured app. So compared to competition like WeChat, for example, which is around 600 megabytes, they went to as low as 200 megabytes, which already give them a little bit of, I would say, competitive advantage. So that was MoMo case. And now we'll go to another one, which is an automotive company developing white label app to control your vehicle. And they were building a super app using Re.Pack from the very first day. And why they went for that? So as it's white label and it has multiple entities of the app, that differs from each other. They wanted to make use of developing feature in isolation and then reusing across multiple applications. So that was first thing that would save them some time and increase code reusability. Another thing that they went for was to enable, and this is specifically for this kind of apps, that you as a user, you have a particular subscription model. So you should have access to a particular set of features. So in this case, you wanted to deliver with the app and its size exactly what the user would need. So if you are having a particular brand of vehicle and you have particular subscription for your either navigation or other features that you might have for your vehicle app, then only those features are provided to you with your application. And moreover, to for app of this size and with multiple features, you don't always need to go through the App Store to provide either some bug fixes, improvements, or even new features. So if you already have this bundle split into smaller ones and if they are operating in JavaScript environment, you can deliver features like omitting the App Store, but you need to be very careful with that. Mike mentioned that to you earlier on, that for this, you need to also be transparent. You want to be transparent with App Store. You cannot, for example, change the purpose of the app with newly delivered feature. It needs to be well described, so make sure you are cautious with that. And all of that just got them to more time and cost-efficient development with increased code reusability and more independence and saving some time of shipping either improvements or features to the market. And now more about the plans for onward Re.Pack usage. So mini app store that would also be based on similar idea. So dynamic feature delivery. So you as a user would go, and if you don't, for example, have this navigation in your subscription, then you would just purchase one and it will just show up in your app. It will be then extended functionality of the application, and only then you'd have a bigger app, but it's for the for a reason. And again, to the extent that third parties would possibly be able to contribute to that. So here, of course, the crucial thing is right agreements, right contracts with your partners. But with Re.Pack and with federated super apps, you can achieve a state when it's secure, when it's manageable, and you can offer that to your customers. So now about yet again survey. So I told you about how you can utilize Re.Pack in practice. Can you see any way that it could help you? If you do, then let us know in the survey. If you have some particular example, then maybe let us know in the Slido comment. And you know how Re.Pack can support your app. So now how we can possibly support you as far as Re.Pack goes. So we at Callstack, we are creators of Re.Pack, and we offer multiple services around it. So first of all, if you go to the demo app that Mike showed to you and check out the open source repository, and you'd like to implement that for your organization, for your product, for your teams, then the Re.Pack training might come in handy for you. And we are now preparing that. You can go to Callstack website to Re.Pack section and sign up for a waiting list. We'll be releasing that, and it's oriented towards helping you trying out Re.Pack, trying out this within your product, and just getting started with that and implementing with onward steps. If you don't want to do it yourself, you can give us a call, drop us a line, and we can do Re.Pack validation for you also. So we'll then conduct a POC. We can tell you whether you can save some time, optimize something for your product and for your teams using Re.Pack. But also, if it's not for you, we can tell you that ahead of time, so you can save some time and effort. And finally, if you already know Re.Pack is for you, if you have known Re.Pack before and you just want to implement that, then we can support you as well. So we can offer you like holistic implementation of Re.Pack, consisting of first evaluation of to what extent you'll benefit from that, plan on structure, on processes, on organizational change, and implement it with you. So afterwards, your teams and your product operate in a new environment, optimized environment. So in any of this sounds like you'd like to talk about it, then scan this QR code or simply go to Callstack website and drop us a line via contact form. I will be happy to arrange anything Re.Pack related. Either you need to ask some questions or you'd like to get some initial consultation on that. We are here to help you. So once again, either scan this QR code or go to Callstack website, drop us a line, and we are here to help you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chris, for getting us through the real life use cases. And now we will go to Q&A. This is your last chance to, you will have more chances. Just go to the slido.com. If you haven't already asked your question, vote on some other questions. This is the QR code to get there. This is the slido.com website, and this is the code that you need to enter to get there. And with that, I'm switching to slido.com. I'm gonna do that. And we have the most voted questions from Konstantinos. It has 6 upvotes. And I'm gonna read the question, and Chris and Mike will try to answer. Can Re.Pack be integrated to a project that has already started 1-2 years ago, or it needs to be configured when project is still in scratch phase?
Okay, I can take that question. So yes, Re.Pack is intended to be included on top of regular React Native setup. It replaces Metro as a bundler, it adds some extra commands to your React Native CLI executable, thanks to its plugin system. So you can bundle or using Webpack, you can start a Webpack server, and you can build iOS or Android using in a way that it's like a regular build, but it's still, instead of running Metro to bundle your code, it uses Webpack, which is orchestrated by Re.Pack. So we have an init command. You can run npx at Callstack /Re.Pack-init, and it will do the base setup for you. So you'll be able to use Re.Pack and Webpack essentially as your bundler with all of its upsides and downsides. When you have that, you'll be able to adopt some extra loaders, for example, for assets, or extra plugins like Module Federation plugin. It's so Module Federation is we say it's like implemented or included by default, because Re.Pack exports a Module Federation plugin, which you can just import in your Webpack configuration and use it. So it requires some setup, because that's Webpack, and that's like the downside of it. The upside is that you're the one in control over the whole Webpack config. So yeah, it's perfectly valid to include Re.Pack in your project. You can run the init command today, play with it, see what works, what breaks, and see the experience. We also very much encourage you to try our showcase app, which has all of the wiring for our intended or like our vision of a ideal super app. So you can just give it a shot.
And Chris, on this specific question, you were talking about use case in MoMo, which was already a super app and which adapted Re.Pack while already being developed up, probably already 1 or 2 years old.
Yeah, even a bit older, but that's definitely possible. And as Mike explained, you can easily use Re.Pack on top of your existing project.
Okay, I'm going to upvote this question so that we know we already answered that. And to the next one, how to deal when the shell app is on different or older React Native version and mini apps are on a newer React Native version? That's
Yeah,
probably Mike to you as well.
yeah, of course. So our answer to that is semantic versioning. So with when we imagine working with many applications as we would work with npm libraries that are versioned, and if there is a breaking change, like switching to a different native library, or upgrading React or React Native because one team decided to adopt it quicker than the other, then they can release a major version that's on a different version of React or React Native. And the host app can decide whether it's ready to pull the version that's compatible or the next one. So this is all possible because with module federation and with the we call it catalog server setup that's out there for you to see on the showcase app, you're able to specify how to get a specific version of the mini application you want to include in your host app or a shell app, and whether you want to pull a particular version or the one that's that's like compatible with the specific major or minor requirements for the server, as it would be for any npm module.
Yeah, and that's the infra team overhead that you were saying about gotchas,
Yes.
right, before.
Yes. The alternative, for example, if you are dealing with a big app in a large monorepo, for example, when there is a need for one team to add new feature that requires like a improved library or a newer version of some library that's not yet compatible with the rest, you're basically blocked until you migrate all of the other apps and make sure they're all compatible. So that's what we mean with the teams being able to deliver at their own pace. So that, hey, if the other teams are too slow, I can bump my major version and upgrade this version of React Native or whatever else. Of course, it adds some overhead to the infra team, but that's their job basically.
Okay, moving on to the next one. Does Re.Pack fit only to super apps? Does it have sense to use Re.Pack for non-super app just to reduce a 40 megabytes app size to half?
So in our experiences, super apps or like big apps with big teams are one of not too many valid use cases for Re.Pack. Metro is it's a really good bundler. Like it's integrated into React Native. It's fast. It produces bundles that are not way too bigger than the ones from Webpack, and also the size of the app of the JavaScript artifact, the JavaScript bundle. It doesn't matter this much. Like if it's a deal breaker for you because your JavaScript is so big that you cannot ship your app to the Google Play Store, for example, which has a limit of 150 megabytes of the AAB binary, then you may need to get creative with some Babel plugins, with tree shaking. There's experimental tree shaking for Metro in the RNX kit that's maintained by folks at Microsoft, for example. And if you still cannot and if it's still like a problem, like a specific size, because for example, particular users won't install it because they use very low-end devices, it happens, then you may consider Re.Pack and code split the parts of the application that are not necessary. But if your use case is to load your JavaScript faster, there's no difference if you have 10 megabytes or 40 megabytes if you're using Hermes as your JavaScript engine, because Hermes supports memory mapping, and it's able to map directly the memory on a flash disk or on the device to the RAM that's currently occupied by your application. And this allows it to like load only parts of your application to RAM that are necessary, which means you don't pay the overhead of reading and parsing and analyzing all the JavaScript bundle, because with Hermes you have the bytecode. The parsing step is already done for you, and you basically load this bytecode directly to your memory.
Mike,
So
maybe
it comes to
maybe I can bottom line what you are discussing right now. So answering the question, it doesn't make sense to use Re.Pack to just directly impact your bundle size. If it's 40 megs and you want to make it in half, or even if it's 100 megs and you want to make it in half, you should consult our ultimate guide to React Native optimization, when we have some tips and tricks for you, like the ones Mike just said, and few more in a specific session regarding the app size. So for app size, don't use Re.Pack. Re.Pack is for large teams that deal with different problems than just the app size.
Yeah. So in fact, one of the not too many reasons we develop Re.Pack and use Webpack under the hood. Like, we started with Webpack because, hey, it will be there was this idea that it would be great to have Webpack on the React Native, because it supports symlinks, it supports code splitting, and all of that, and web developers are familiar with it. But today, Metro is also capable of symlinks to some extent, and it's also it also has like experimental lazy loading, and it adds some throughout the last 6 years. Yeah, 6 years. Metro added some of the features that only Webpack had. So, but it didn't add module federation. And we believe if Metro adds module federation one day, we can swap the or add support for Re.Pack using Metro's module federation, and have people use that because it's more integrated into React Native. But it's not there. It's not on the roadmap. So we use Webpack, and this actually also incentivize or lets the core team to acknowledge that there are other bundlers out there, and architect the React Native in a way that's more open to alternative bundlers and not close to one particular solution.
Michał, this actually you are answering the questions that is 2 questions down. So I can just give you the space to talk, and I will just ask the question and you will continue talking about this. So the question is, are there any alternatives to Re.Pack that give similar results?
Yeah, so if it comes to module federation, no, there are no alternatives that we're aware. There are alternative bundlers like ESBuild. There is Joel Artvison that's developing his like experimental support for ESBuild, which is also cool to watch and observe. But there's apart from Metro, Re.Pack, and ESBuilds, there's basically no bundling alternative, and with Webpack, like Webpack is super flexible, so it was possible to fit some of the very integrated things that Metro is doing in the React Native runtime, or rather React Native runtime is doing for Metro, to include that in Webpack as well in a like slightly orthodox way, because there was no public API for that. And we're our plan is to work with the core team of React Native and core Metro team to bridge some of the gaps that we needed to fill for React Native to support Re.Pack and
I
Webpack.
feel like you already also answered the last question on this list, which is how is Re.Pack different to Metro? Metro is another bundler, and Re.Pack is using Webpack under the hood. So that's like the two different bundlers.
Yeah.
Do you want to elaborate on that, or should we just cross it out?
I think there's no need to say anything more.
Okay. So with that said, we have still one question, which has many upvotes, but we went towards some of the other questions because that was just the right thing to do given your thought process there. But last question for upvotes from Alexandre. Speaking of dynamically loading modules, is there any support for offline mode? Could those modules be preloaded, or they just won't be available unless online?
So yeah, so there is support for preloading modules. It's also possible to build with module federation in mind, and have all the modules bundled in the application, and then you would lose basically all the benefits of using module federation in your team, because now you wouldn't, or maybe not all. Yeah, I think you could still build in isolation and version stuff, but you could pay slight runtime cost of having some extra Webpack code that loads the stuff that's like was supposed to be dynamically loaded in a static way. We haven't done any kind of measurements on that. It's just that module federation supports eagerly loading specific modules. This is how we eagerly load all the native modules, native components, and React and React Native, for example. So they're just there in the bundle, not code splitted by accident, let's say, by Webpack, because it thought it would be the optimal way. So yeah, I think that there would be a case for that. However, like if your user downloads your app from somewhere, they have the internet connection. So if you like care about loading specific feature for offline support, you could preload this specific feature, and preloading everything would like destroy the solutions of having less code shipped to the user when they don't need it. So I think this is your design decision, and Yeah. Łukasz, would you like
Actually, I
to
would
add
like,
something?
I have a follow-up to this one. So let's say I'm a user of the app that has some federated modules. So my first question would be, if I don't have an internet connection and I go to the portion of the app that uses the federated module that I haven't downloaded yet, do I have any fallback? Is the application giving me any feedback that, oh,
Yeah.
there should be some part of this application, but right now you don't have an internet connection, so you can't get there?
Yeah, of course. And it's up to you to develop how it's done. With in our showcase, we are using Suspense to load the lazily downloaded mini apps and provide the error boundary for loading the module. So if it fails to load, you'll be able to catch this error using, for example, error boundary, and provide the user with specific like text message or any kind of messaging that's relevant for this particular use case.
And then if I get the internet connection and I go to that portion of the app, I close my app, is it already fetched? Is this already cached? So when I go there the second time, and again, I don't have an internet connection then, but I already been to that portion of the app, is it already on my device? Can I use it? Or will the call fail again and I see the error message again?
Yeah, I think it should be cached. So it should be possible to retrieve it without without extra network request. Although I'm not 100% sure if this is happening. It would be great if for example you could try it and file an issue if it's not happening, because it should work.
Yeah, like we are open for requests for improvements for this library. This is open source.
Yeah.
And like you can file an issue, you can contribute all kinds of things.
Yeah, exactly. It's an open source project. We have a full-time dedicated maintainer, and we actually have one maintainer and one developer for this library. So now it's a great time to get more support, more feedback, just for free, because it's open source. And however, like we cannot promise to prioritize any specific feature especially if it's not on our roadmap or not a blocker for someone.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's all with the questions that we had on the table on the Slido. Sorry, I have another question. It just popped out. So just last one question. For this case, should cache handled by us or will be handled automatically from Eren, from React Native?
Yeah, so in this case, there should be an API that allow you to decide. So this is, for example, what we allow users when loading. So when loading the bundle, there is cache, like it's there. You can configure your way, so it should work. And when you're loading a third-party module, you're the one in control on when it will be updated to user. So you can update it on the fly, or update it for the next run, or I think there was some third use case. But we have an API for that was recently developed by Andrew, one of our developers working with Re.Pack. So you should be the one in control here.
Thank you, Mike. That was all of the questions that we have, and I think Chris wants to say something.
Chime in for a second, and for everyone who is still here, if you didn't wanted to consult like your very case in this meeting, or you would like to deep dive into some details, So just let us know, and we are happy to just meet and talk in maybe more cozy conditions. And yeah, just then we are happy to answer more questions, or if they come up after this webinar.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, like this slide says, thank you. Thank you both our panelists, Chris Pawlak and Mike Pierzchała. And
Yeah,
thank
thank
you
you,
all
Łukasz.
of the attendees for being with us today.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.